First of all, apologies for my voice. I've been very sick the past week and still recovering, but funnily enough, that's what brings us here in the first place. The other day, I made the mistake of checking that dog pile of a Reddit thread posted after I decided to delete everything recently. This thread, although you could argue it's just Reddit being Reddit, that I should just ignore it, was full of smears, baseless claims, and above all a very bitter, very personally motivated attack on my reputation. If you're brave enough to tough this out, keep an open mind and not just immediately jump on whatever bullshit randoms who have nothing to do with any of this claim with zero evidence to back what they're saying up. What you're about to hear and see, again with tons of receipts unlike certain other people, is my side of the story and what led to all this. Why? Because even after years and years saying it over and over again, even after I delete everything to try and finally get away from the same handful of people who just can't stop yourselves, I'm still being brigaded to this day, even by Fallout modders for some reason, because you people can't let go. Although this guy was certainly very quick to delete his comment, therefore it didn't happen, right? If none of this is making sense to you, the two preceding Imager posts are in the pinned comment below. Read that first and then come back. I'll still be here. For those who don't care about any of this, that's fine. If you just want to know where my mods are at now, here you go. It's completely free. I turned the optional donation system off. You don't even need to log in, and this site will be a repo for all my previously released work. If they're not all already up, the rest of the mods will be coming soon. I'm doing the best I can. To be clear, it will also be inactive. I don't want anything to do with Nexus Mods or Skyrim or any of this anymore. My only regret is ever starting to mod games in the first place. Lastly, if you just want to hit the dislike button for confirmation bias, leave a snarky comment and slink back to your Discord server, then I'm more than happy for you to do so. Again, I haven't deleted anything. No one has ever been silenced on my end. I'm upfront, honest, maybe to a fault, but that's your opinion. Unlike the very nasty mob mentality that has driven this from the very beginning, it has always been me and just me in my corner. I don't operate in a group. I'm not up on a pedestal in some Discord server because I'm not a spineless coward that slinks around in DMs using proxies and riling up the masses who love nothing more than a good witch hunt. Everything I've done in this has been public. This video will naturally be the same. I have the guts to speak publicly because truth and fairness matters, whatever Nexus Mods and the like believe. There is so much bullshit, so many baseless accusations, so much misinformation floating around that it's enough to make your head spin. Lies on top of lies on top of lies, and it's all been slurped up by the vast majority of people because I was the big news item, the whipping boy, the villain of the week. I have every right to defend myself from this disgraceful attack and years of harassment. The fact is that most people already think I'm the villain. They don't want to acknowledge anything to the contrary, and this will confirm what they already believe. That's your opinion, but for the rest of you, all I ask is that you hear me out and keep an open mind. The gloves are well and truly off. Now, let's take it from the top. This video was hard enough to structure as it is, considering we're going to be jumping around a lot. So let's start with the Reddit thread itself, to get a bunch of silly gripes out of the way, before we jump into Celestine, Elizabeth Plant, Skyrim Extended Cut, and all that jazz that's led up to today. Hold my beer, I guess. First of all, we have this comment at the very top of the thread, which is the same old dead horse of mod author has a tantrum, they're a child, taking their toys and leaving, etc. I already responded to this in part 2, the gist of it being that you're welcome to your opinion, but I wasn't intending to deprive anyone of anything. Like I have already explained in detail, my decision to remove everything was solely over my disgust at Nexus Mods and their handling of this situation, which anyone should hopefully see was a classic case of rules for thee but not for me, and trying to cover their ass and save face after publishing that interview. This has also been disproving, considering I've just shown you where to get all my mods again, and just like I promised, everything's been uploaded somewhere else. But let's just ignore that, huh? One thing I will add here, since I forgot it last time, is that it's funny every time the whole tantrum narrative comes up, is that the focus is on the mod author supposedly throwing a hissy fit and taking their toys, while simultaneously it's the end users screaming like children for having their toys taken away. Think about that for a moment and maybe the point will sink in. Or, to use your analogy, your dummy's back in your mouth and you'll stop screaming like a child because you have your toys returned to you. Regardless, this comment is a textbook case of someone going off what little information they have and ripping into the big bad to farm upvotes and attention. Good for you, you got it. I'm just scrolling down and taking screenshots, don't expect any fancy editing here. I'm also not going to go through every single one, partly because a lot of them double up on the same core point. I don't have much to add since it's opinion, or we'll be covering what they're saying in a bit anyway. If you think that's being deliberately selective, then type Craftian into Google, it's the top result, and I'd encourage you to read through the entire thread yourself. Anyway, next up. So this one's kind of off the last point, again painting the mod author as the child or whatever, but instead of you hearing more of my croaky voice, this guy gets it. I'm just going to chuck the reply up on screen. The initial comment was made out of frustration. Yes, it was an exaggeration, and yes, it was unfair to paint the, quote, overwhelming majority of VAs that I've worked with in that light. I will own up to that and apologize. It's okay to admit you're wrong, but as you're about to see, that comment was made out of frustration given all the work that had just gone down the drain. You better believe we're going to go through what happened with Celestine behind the scenes, along with the many examples of what I've tried to work through over the years, but let's just leave this for now. Oh, I should also say, regardless of the comments or which side they're on, please do not harass anyone. I don't have a Reddit account. I deleted the only one I had specifically for modding like 5 years ago now, but don't descend to that level. This whole drama stems from harassment. We don't need to add to it further. Don't downvote them either. This is how dominant narratives form on platforms like Reddit through subscriber counts, likes, etc. And why people coming into it will usually just conform to whatever the popular opinion is. If you don't care about any of this and you've somehow made it this far, then the most important takeaway should be this. Think critically about everything and always have a healthy level of skepticism. That goes for everything I'm saying too, but I digress. Friendly reminder that this is by people who are 4 years and counting past their release date, launched a $50 Patreon tier, and haven't delivered a single thing they've promised. Meanwhile, like most big mod projects, as I observed over and over again in Beyond Skyrim, both in public and private channels, they behave like rock stars, trash other people's work with delight, and cultivate echo chambers of fawning fans that sites like Reddit and Discord are fundamentally designed for. From my understanding, although this is hearsay, so you should take this with an extra grain of salt, the team is small, with the bulk of the work being done by 1 or 2 actual implementers. Meanwhile, the public faces of the project, Katia, however you say it, also known as Charter Frost, and Elizabeth Plant prefer to take more tertiary roles in development. Maybe this was why, already 2 years over their release date of the 10th anniversary in 2021, for a project overhauling the entire main quest, gameplay footage was released of Bleak Falls Barrow. You know, the very start of the main questline. Boy oh boy, do I have some stories to tell of what happens behind the scenes in big mod projects like these, and why so many collapse, but that's way outside the scope of this video. Let's keep moving. So this one kinda comes back to that comment thread I showed in part 2. This person is basically saying the same thing. Sit down, shut up, and get back to work. People like these are gonna make great middle managers one day. For real though, it's interesting that the expectation is always there for the mod author to take it like I've talked about previously. Sites like Reddit are always chomping at the bit for drama because that's kind of what social media is designed for, and treat the moment a mod author steps out of line and talks back as some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. Aha, see? Craftian was always some socially stunted dickhead that walked all over people. Nothing could be further from the truth. Again, this comes out of confirmation bias given the thread and what had just happened around this time, so I can't really blame them or similar people for thinking this way. But no, as I made it very clear to Pickysaurus, the Nexus moderator who threatened me with the ban in part 2, for the first time ever, I was not going to sit down, I was not going to shut up, and I was not going to pretend this didn't happen. This segues nicely into the next point, which is... So this one's kind of a 2-for-1 deal. I'm rolling the Craftian as a jerk and can't take criticism into the same one because they're essentially the same and overlap. First of all, in about a decade on Nexus Mods, I made what must have been at least 1,000 comments and took the time to respond to many DMs, often from people who needed help for compatibility reasons or whatever. But like we just went over, this is treated as the smoking gun for people to go, hey, look, this guy can't take criticism. Have you ever looked at any of my comment sections? All I get is criticism, dude. That's just the way this works. Most people are more likely to comment when they need help or something negative than those who are busy playing the game. And it's not like this is exclusive to Nexus Mods either. Just take a look at the kind of thing I get on YouTube. Like I said in part 2, I believe in absolute free speech. And you know what? Not once have I ever silenced somebody, have I ever deleted a post, have I stepped into these comment threads. It's not even about subjective issues either. It's okay to hate or be disappointed by something I've released. I'm not above criticism, even when it's mean-spirited. It's okay, this is the internet. Still, just a few days before this all happened, there was yet another pile-on from someone who didn't like Old Blood. That's okay, even though they admitted they didn't play any of the side quests with the insane amount of choices in many of them, but they then try and make out their criticism was made in good faith with comments like these. Again, rules for the mod users, but not for me, mod authors. You can say whatever you like, and how dare the millisecond someone doesn't just smile and wave as they lay down to be your virtual doormat. Finally, this one in particular, since it just like the can't take criticism narrative, my work has long had the association of being a buggy, unplayable mess. There is a playthrough on this very channel that you can go right now and watch every single thing works in Old Blood from start to finish. I take, or should I say used to, great pride in making sure everything I release is the best quality it can be. Scripting, voice acting, whatever. And I playtest everything over and over and over again. This in particular hurts because for time immemorial, I got people who come into my mod pages with a 3000 plugin load order and scream in my face that my mod is buggy and I've broken everything for them. This is essentially what this person is doing. I'm having issues with your mod, therefore it's entirely your fault and nothing to do with my load order. This is not the case. You need to understand what compatibility means and the distinction between a bug and a conflict. I'm not trying to make out that I'm infallible, of course. Citizens was very rough and amateur as it was my first big mod project and a learning experience. Orpheus had issues I didn't encounter and then spent ages trying to recreate. And of course I sympathize with all people who run into any issues. I've consistently done my best to patch everything and as quickly as possible, but if I have to use an analogy, think of modding your game as like a tower of Jenga, or whatever it's called, that American game of stacking blocks. Stuff goes wrong, the creation engine is notorious, and I am just one guy. Anyway, back to the point about criticism though. Let's take a look at some comments I've received over the years first of all, and then the way I've responded to them to see what a big bad meanie head I really am. Pause if you want to read through the whole thing, I won't drag this out for super long. The people who need to see this the most are the ones who won't be watching, but I'm the one with the ego, of course. I'm the guy who can't take criticism. I'm the tinfoil hat lunatic, the stalker, and so on. To end this section, I'll drop a screenshot from something I wrote in part 2. This guy gets it. Look, one of the things I've always tried to be is genuine, or to borrow a term from psychology, congruent, because I have nothing to hide. I'm just a normal person. I'll fully admit, early on I came across in an arrogant way with some of the mod descriptions I wrote, although I've never made a secret about how critical I've been of Bethesda's more recent games, and that I too, surprisingly, have opinions you may or may not disagree with. But specifically it's about this mental health point. Part of being genuine is that I've talked about the fact I have depression. Yes, I've had it for a long time, and even before that, I had severe social anxiety as a teenager. We can roll this into the burnout bit too, since Elizabeth just couldn't resist kicking me while I'm down, because what I write in these moments is what I'm feeling at the time. This is not meant as an attempt to sympathy bait, and I would never, ever use something extreme like self-harm either. Again, I have no social media channels outside of YouTube, and even then it's just a place to dump trailers or gameplay footage for mod pages. I don't want attention, I'm an introvert. This whole thing, like I've said from the start, I just wanted to be left alone, and now my life has been dragged through the mud, and I've been tarred and feathered by people who are flinging shit they apparently don't need any proof to back up. I'm just a guy, and I thought it would be okay to talk about the fact I feel burnt out, such as this comment here as soon as I released Community Voices, and Elizabeth had come into the Bad Moon comment section. I felt burnt out when I finished Mythos and thought that would be the end of it. I felt burnt out after Redux, and a good friend of mine who was going through a big Bethesda modding phase at the time sent me pages and pages and pages of screenshots of Elizabeth Plant, Cassia, and various other members of the server absolutely tearing it, me, and other mod authors down. I felt burnt out after finally finishing Easy PG, thinking it was a nice little send-off. I came back for Old Blood because I love VTM and I wanted to do something ambitious. Orpheus started out just messing around with Outfit Studio one day while I was enjoying making stuff for New Vegas. And then, lo and behold, everything that happened with Celestine and then Bad Moon has been the final nail in the coffin. Is it so wrong to say I'm burnt out? Am I not allowed to come back or change my mind? Have I committed some kind of crime here? You'd think so, considering how vitriolic some of these comments are. At most, you could say I'm being overly dramatic, but what relevance did this even have to Elizabeth's wall of text? Nothing, because it was personally motivated. I could say I'm burnt out every single day on every single mod page and come back the next one. It's none of her business and it doesn't change anything, but she just had to stick the knife in there. This Reddit comment after the fact is also surprisingly sympathetic. I wonder why she wrote it like that. Like I said in part 2, I'm a fucking idiot who kept coming back because I want to create. Even now, I want to create. I'm a writer, it's what I find fulfilling, but I can't anymore because modding genuinely has made my life hell, and I don't know, maybe it's just me being a pussy or whatever, but I don't want to be in these spaces anymore. This video is only here as one final attempt to clear things up, defend my name, and, I suppose, partly die on the hill after speaking out for the first time ever, rather than just sitting there and taking it like a good little bit. I mean, mod author. Anyway, that got too deep. Let's move on. This one's kind of shorter, but come on man. I can't see the original comment, but whatever it was, please don't be sexist or anything like that. That might sound ironic coming from me. Don't worry, we're about to get to the ugliest of smears in a second, but whatever ammunition is being fired on either side, there's no need to bring terms like woke or incel or whatever into it. That's all. You're welcome to your opinion, of course, it's the internet, but there's no need for stuff like that. Finally, there's this little one here. Like I said, we're going to go through what happened behind the scenes with Celestine in the next section, but despite the issues I had working with Thea, her decision to withdraw over content in Beyond Reach was absolutely not one of them. I mean, even if I was the voice acting Gestapo that so many have made me out to be, how would I have been able to force her to do anything? How would I have even gone about trying? Exactly. The content of Beyond Reach is separate from all this. It's what happened around that update on top of everything. Thea had every right to step back, and I don't fault her for that, but like I said, we'll get to that in a bit. Same with this comment here. What I will tell you to focus on in this comment from someone talking out of their ass, as if there's some kind of authority when I actually did everything they're saying here, is the bit that says, quote, talk to people in advance. But again, we're gonna get to it soon. Being called cringe by a terminally online mod author on Reddit who again feels the need to comment and farm internet points on something he has no clue about sure is something. Also, for the record, that whole "the end" video I posted when I deleted my account wasn't some cry for attention or even meant as some kind of mic drop or whatever. YouTube is the only social media channel that remained open for me, and the video was really just there to direct people to the part 2 link in the description. I could have made a 5-second video with just a black screen and it wouldn't have changed anything. We also have this guy who really hates me, quote, as a person. I mean, that's fine, but I don't even know who you are, and we've never met. I'm afraid I had to get those devil horns I sprouted sawn off. They were clashing with the wallpaper. Alright, here's the big one. This, along with clearing up all the bullshit floating around about what happened with Celestine and the cancelled Beyond Reach update, is basically what pushed me to make this video. Why? Because I can sit back and let people say all kinds of things about me, about who I am as a person, about my mental health, all the while not knowing the first thing about me. But this smear is not only categorically, fundamentally wrong, it is so disingenuous. It is not only deeply offensive, but I deny it with every fibre of my being. It's an attack on someone who developed Kana, ironically voiced by Elizabeth Plant, and probably the best known lesbian romance in the modding scene, along with literally hundreds of characters of all fantasy races, genders, sex, etc. I've even said myself that I am asexual long before this even happened. I just don't feel pride about it at all. I don't care, that's kind of the point. To me, sexuality is such a tiny part of the complex thoughts, experiences, and emotion that makes up the substance of an entire human being. But, of course, it's only a problem further down the thread when someone who got called out for framing something they said because it was in my favour and against the overwhelming confirmation bias present in this thread. Here is the full screenshot provided by Elizabeth in her response. From the way this person writes and what they've stated in the message, it's very obvious who this person is. But just like Elizabeth, they're more than happy to make enthusiastic posts publicly and take my recommendations. All the while, they continue to prove just how many VAs are so nasty and two-faced in the community. Who could blame people for turning to AI? This whole situation certainly proves that. Like I said earlier, these people are cowards who use proxies and skulk around DMs because they wouldn't even have the courage to walk past me on the street, let alone say this absolutely baseless nonsense to my face, because they know it's bullshit, yet somehow think a screenshot of a Twitter DM is damning evidence. This allegation that I'm some kind of anti-SJW or whatever is hilarious because it just goes to show I can't win. For years, I've had people telling me that Anya from Citizens of Tamriel is unrealistic, preachy, and now on the other hand, I have people calling me not woke enough. That long-standing open permissions on all my work didn't suddenly change to swoop in and stop a patch that made Kana available to men before the author was ironically doxed by Gordev in his Discord server, or that my criticisms of what's happened in the games industry, how increasingly polarized the whole culture war is, or whatever, is some smoking gun or dog whistling. As I made it clear through what I called the pin of shame at the time, I have no side. I'm not politically motivated, and I'm just a guy creating characters. The fact that people have even tried to misconstrue my political beliefs one way or another is hilarious, because if it is true that all my characters are mouthpieces, I haven't done a very good job of being consistent, have I? You have a character like Taralan, who was explicitly written to try and justify the Thalmor, an adept to Bethesda's thinly veiled analogue of a certain German party from the 1930s, then Bacchus, who's a hedonistic douchebag, to Galen, who's disillusioned with the Stormcloaks. That one really riled people up, since they apparently took it to be a critique of real-world nationalism or something, all the way up to refusing to do romances for people like Eris and Orpheus. But anyway, back to the screenshot, and let's pick this apart piece by piece. First of all, it's interesting that despite trying to cancel me with a claim they obviously can't back up with any evidence, they still admit that their experience of working with me was positive. You know, just like the hundreds of other VAs I've worked with over the years, which you'd think would contradict the character Assassination as some kind of big bully that Elizabeth has been trying to make me out as this whole time. I stand by what I said about working with Elizabeth, considering the pages and pages of receipts I've shown other people in this very thread coming forward to corroborate my claims about her, the Skyrim Voice Alliance extended cut team's behaviour. I'm not sure why you'd think I'd give her a glowing recommendation. One that, I'll remind you, she still had up on her site for years, and even continued to edition up to Old Blood, years and years after, when the voice-acting Gestapo supposedly did everything wrong. Funny how that works, isn't it? The person she's referring to here is named Justice Margowski, also known as Mild Hot Sauce. The comment is I left on one of his auditions, I think it was the male guard's minor role, for the Community Voices casting call at the time. Went something along the lines of, "You're one of the worst, most unprofessional VAs I've ever worked with. The fact you'd even think of auditioning again is astounding. Now, let's show you why." We're kind of getting off track here because this is New Vegas stuff, but he voiced a character in a quest mod I released last year called Maximus Duport, essentially a sadist scumbag who ran a slave ring that traded with Caesar's Legion. Maximus is one of the key, literally, figures to the Children of the Sun mod. Here's his credit at the bottom of the mod page for people who are going to be grasping at straws in a few moments, to show you I'm not making this up in some kind of secret conspiracy against VAs worldwide. Now, what happens with the way I run a project, the same all the way back to the first part of Citizens of Tamriel in 2019, is that I reach out to anyone who's cast and send them an invite to the Discord server with private roles that has each script within it. Here's an example. Once everyone's been cast, I then post an announcement and then add them to their private channels for feedback, questions, and so on. Here's another example. If it's just a single follower or something, I'll usually just do it in DMs directly, but I literally copy over the same message each time. And another one, and another one. After about a week, I'll ping everyone and check how they're going. The 2-week thing has never ever been set in stone. I don't mind if it takes 1,000 years to finish the mod. What I do mind is having to chase people up like their mother or school teacher, my messages being ignored, sassy or rude comments, and so on. It's also at this point that I'll ask for credit info for the mod page. Why is this relevant to Justice? Let me show you. Justice never responded to the original announcement. About 2 weeks later, big bag Craftian hounding VAs for lines every single day, right? I check in and he explains that he should have preferential treatment when I've made everything clear from the beginning and then everyone's treated equally. He then tries to make out I'm unprofessional for not reaching out to him directly. Finally, to cap it all off, what he submits is full of mistakes, missing lines, wrong pronunciation, despite the fact I went out of my way to do that, such as Caesar or Kaiser. He didn't follow a single instruction, and the final submission was appalling. Now, looking at this, actual receipts and not some Twitter screenshot with the benefit of public opinion against the mod author, would you think you'd give this person a glowing recommendation? Children of the Sun was one of the more trying projects to get finished because of VA, and Justice was by far the worst of the lot. He obviously hid or deleted the Community Voices edition after I commented, and now this person is trying to use my comments as proof that I somehow have a pattern of it. Except it's literally the only time I've done this on CCC. Interesting. But we're not finished. Let's move on with this Twitter grab. Now we get to the real kicker. The video she's referring to is freely available for you to watch on my channel. It's called Critical Role and the Death of RPG Culture, an opinion piece that I uploaded last year. I'd encourage you to go watch it and see where exactly I say modern RPGs are being ruined by Tumblr, Critical Role, or gay people as they imply. If you don't want to, here's the gist of it.
Why Critical Role is being used in particular is because it's emblematic of all the quirky OCs, Marvel-esque millennial snark, and main character syndrome that's led to a sharp decline in writing quality and storytelling as a whole across role-playing games. In that way, it's not unlike Marvel and Star Wars franchising that creates characters for the explicit purpose of selling merchandise of them, because that's all that many RPGs see characters as now, objects to brand their IP on, to get picked up by internet culture and proliferate through these communities.
Now that you've seen it, can you tell me where, in the entire 13 minutes and 8 seconds video, do I make any reference to gay people ruining RPGs? No? How about a single mention of the word woke, or DEI, or BlackRock, or SJWs, or whatever crypto-fascist language they seem to think I'm employing? What's that? There isn't any? Yeah, funny how that works. This person should be disgusted at themselves for taking what was otherwise a pretty tame chat about OCs and main character syndrome affecting RPGs. How Critical Role was being used as only one example of the shift in the cultural zeitgeist, and completely and dishonestly twisting what I was saying into some kind of far-right rant. Much like the wall of hate that I got when it apparently got picked up by the algorithm at the time, people can't stand the idea of someone not worshipping Baldur's Gate 3 or random e-celebrities unconditionally, and that if you criticize a piece of media they consume, it's an attack on them personally, and thus you must obviously be an ist or a phobe. You should be ashamed of yourself, 1, for even making this allegation in the first place, and 2, knowing that it's completely baseless, using Elizabeth as your mouthpiece because you can't back up anything you're implying about me or my work publicly. How dare you, coward. That was a big one, so let's wrap up the whole Reddit response thing with the last few points. The fact that any developers of Fallout the Frontier would admit to this publicly and comment on anything ever again is amusing and deeply hypocritical. Since this guy obviously lacks self-awareness, here's what a 5-second Google search can reveal about the project for you. This is the same project that made foot fetish references to a character in the Crusaders questline, later giving you the option to make her break down in tears and turn her into your, quote, little slave girl. She's also under 18, where you can have sex with a Deathclaw, where you have a race of sentient lizard people that, again, you could have sex with. Had a Tumblr parody of a girl that explicitly said when she turns 18, future tense, she wanted to go out and have sex. She also draws explicit art, and her 18th birthday card was definitely not added last minute to try and save face or anything. Had a perk that implied the character Wrench had sex with her dog. AJ, the only woman in the Wolfpack mercenary band, is someone who gets abused as the Legion's concubine because of that fact. Had a known, shall we say, child enthusiast furry on the development team for years, someone who only drew some UI art, but then was conveniently thrown under the bus as a scapegoat, despite the fact they had nothing to do with the writing. Finally, tried to play it all off as bugged Wild Wasteland encounters. It's just a joke, bro. Really? We didn't mean it, bro. This totally didn't pass through years of development, QA, scripts being handed out, and bug testing before release. It's all just a misunderstanding, of course. You'll have to forgive me for not caring what someone like that has to say about me or anything, and people say my writing is bad. Lastly, to round out this long sideshow in a lack of self-awareness, we have some bigwig mod author strolling in to make a snarky comment, all to farm that precious karma that I can tell you means absolutely nothing to people outside the website. This being the same mod author who frequently ranted about bombing refugees and supporting neo-Nazis. But yes, I'm so much worse, obviously. Not only that, I'm the right-wing lunatic. He even used his mental health to cover it all up. Like I've said from the beginning, this stuff writes itself. You really can't make this up. Enjoy the view from the moral high ground, a Fallout the Frontier developer, and a mod author who conveniently gets excused from wanting refugees to be blown up simply because his mods are popular and you people don't want to admit it, are obviously a source of truth in all things. Now on to the next section. We're skipping over Elizabeth's sappy comment to try and make out that she gives a rat's ass about me, despite orchestrating years and years of harassment in an effort to paint herself in a better light, because we'll be coming back to it later. It doubles up with a lot of the rubbish she's been spouting anyway. One last thing, let's take inventory of everything that's been provided so far. I have provided 2 gigantic Imager posts, laying out all the evidence and the posts that Elizabeth, her friends, and the Nexus staff went out of their way to suppress and pretend never happened, out of what anyone with half a brain can see is a desperate attempt to save face and cover their ass. I haven't hidden or tried to twist anything. There's also this video which is full of receipts to back up every single thing I've said. Meanwhile, we have a bunch of bitter comments, people using confirmation bias to farm the hate train without providing any evidence, and Elizabeth herself only has a few screenshots of some DMs and expects that to be treated as some kind of damning proof. I'll let you be the judge. Of course, the reality is the people who need to see this video the most are the exact ones sitting in these Discord servers, instantly sharing any videos I upload, disliking them, opening up any mods I put out in Xedit to point out their flaws. Obviously it's too much to hope for, despite the many times I've gone out of my way for the point to finally sink in, but here's hoping, right? I wouldn't even want an apology from any of you. My simple request remains the same. Leave me alone, stop brigading my comments, and like Father Elijah says, let go. Or just keep commenting, keep posting in DMs. This whole video, much like Elizabeth's original comment that kicked this all off, just goes to show what I've been saying. You just keep proving my point because you can't help yourselves. Here comes the big one. I said over and over again that I wouldn't go into what happened behind the scenes with Thea publicly, and that it was always going to remain private, because that's what professionalism involves, even if getting Celestine made was difficult at times. However, considering I'm still getting comments about it, and that Reddit thread was a prime example of people who have no idea what they're talking about, trying to make out that I was the villain in all this, it's reached the point where there's no reason to keep this under wraps. And why am I still defending this stuff anyway? Again, Thea, if you happen to be watching this, be sure to thank Elizabeth Plant, the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord, and all the completely baseless claims made over the past few weeks about my character, mental state, behaviour, the works. I have nothing against you personally. I was earnest when I said that, unlike some people, I don't kick people when they're down, and that I had no intention of saying anything more than that one frustrated comment on March 29 until Elizabeth needed to be the hero. Now, let's take it from the top. You started this, Elizabeth, and congratulations. You're realizing that your actions have consequences. Try and get the Nexus staff to delete this. Finally, to everyone else, please do not harass Thea Salone. Please do not email her, do not seek her out, leave her alone, just like me. As I've said over and over again, this is between Elizabeth Plant and I. I'm finally going public with this because my name has been dragged through the mud for too long, and people keep making assumptions when they don't know shit about what happened. Here goes. In mid-December last year, I posted yet another casting call for a character that I'd been working on for a while. From the start, I'd been open and clear that Celestine was directly inspired by the Sisters of Battle from Warhammer 40k, my favourite faction alongside the Sisters of Silence. For years, I've made no secret of the fact that I don't really care about lore. I explore interesting ideas and throw in some justification to fit the setting and the fact I'm working with a particular game's mod tools, because immersion and thematic consistency is more important. If it happens to line up with some book from 20 years ago, great. I got some really amazing auditions at the time. I can tell you from my experience of doing this for many years that it's often very difficult to get good voice actresses because there's simply less of them overall. It's much better now than it was, say, 5 years ago, but I digress. Note that bold text at the bottom of the description, Elizabeth. You better believe we're going to get to that later. It was honestly a hard choice, but I decided to go with Thea. I messaged her with the same kind of comment you saw earlier with an invite to Discord. She explained she wasn't on Discord and that she'd prefer to do this over email. First time for me, but that's okay. I sent her the same announcement details you saw earlier with a link to the entire script. Here is a screenshot as proof. A few days later, presumably because she was off on holiday or something, she responded. I said that's fine, and again, reiterated like every single one of my projects, there is no deadline anything has to hit. Rather than supposedly hounding VAs every single day to submit their lines immediately, like certain people claim with zero evidence, I checked in to see how things were going a few days later. Thea had a cold, which was fine, and I genuinely wished her to feel better and gave her some space while I got back to working on other things. Another 5 days, and I checked in to see how things were going. Thea had started it, which was great, and I got her credit information since I was just waiting for the lines at this stage and setting up the mod page. Note the date here, almost 2 weeks to the day from when the script had been handed out and she'd only just started. Again, the 2 weeks deadline has never been important, hoping that it would be done relatively soon. Boy, was I wrong. About another week passes and I check in to see how she's going. Note the date here, suggested by her that she'd have it in by the 20th. Thea gets sick again and pushes the date back to the 24th. Again, the supposed voice acting Gestapo wishes her well and that the mod will be done when it's done. That's sure starting to paint a different picture, isn't it? What's next? Are you going to claim these are doctored? Again, we missed the 24th. The fans on my PC had broken, and doing anything made my computer sound like a jackhammer that was about to explode. That doesn't really have anything to do with this, just including it anyway so people don't try and make out that I'm hiding something or whatever. We're now over a month in, missed 2 deadlines set by Thea herself, and to top it all off, the preview of her lines was only halfway through the script. Halfway. Let that sink in. This is particularly damning in light of her setting deadlines that she was never going to meet. Again, Big Bad Bully Craftian shows a crazy level of understanding, almost as if this is what I've been doing the whole time, and people who pull claims out of their ass about how I manage projects have no evidence to back their attempted smears up. Chatted a bit about the lore, although it's not super relevant here. We're in the home stretch now, almost a month and a half since the lines were handed out. It's here, after everything, that the first time ever, I have a VA who wants me to sign a waiver around the use of AI. You know, the guy who's long said that I have open permissions, except for specific clauses around voice cloning and AI. The guy who launched Community Voices and specifically said it was fundamentally against AI. But that's not all. After everything, after the uphill battle to get this mod made and Thea to submit her lines, she has the audacity to hold the last part of the lines hostage until I sign the form. Again, a guy who has made it very, very clear that I'm fundamentally against AI. I dabbled with XVA Synth when that first appeared. From memory, it was just faction exclusivity since it wasn't possible to achieve the results through splicing, and also that orc at the beginning of Ness's quest, but the results were unsurprisingly robotic and kind of shit. I would much rather work with real people and help expand their portfolios, like I have for years and years now. Even then, dabbling with XVA Synth was back before 11 Labs was even a thing. But yes, sign the waiver, Craftian, so I can hang this legal document over your head, and then you'll get the lines I've taken a month and a half to submit. And here we go. At long last, a month and a half, 2 missed deadlines from the VA herself, a legal waiver that holds the character in release hostage, Celestine was finally released for 1.0, almost an entire month after I'd set up the mod page. If you think it ends here, don't worry, now we're about to get into the updates. The beginning of work on the Vigilant update. 2 things are important to note here. First, where I say I'll be sharing the script when it's done, as in, running it by the VA beforehand. The other being her enthusiasm over Vigilant. This is going to be very relevant in a minute. Script was finished the next day. Again, she's super excited and wants to do any updates. Stay with me, we're going to get to that very soon. The next day is when I run the Beyond Reach update by her as well. Again, note her enthusiasm about this specific update announcement too, and that, quote, "Truly though, I am excited. Much more than Vigilant, this is going to be very damning in a minute. Stay with me, we're almost there." Also, if you think I'm cutting off some important exchange, I'll tell you what the rest of this back and forth involved. Originally, the bad ending of Vigilant, massive spoilers by the way, where Molag Bal enters Aetherius and kills Stendar, I wrote her reaction to it as Celestine completely breaking down, she's unable to go on, and then ultimately commits YouTube's favourite word. Thea understandably argued that this undermined her character, which I agreed to, although not her suggestion to mantle Stendar in his place, as A, this would be fanfiction levels of main character syndrome and law breaks, and also B, because I personally don't view Celestine as aspiring to any kind of power. She needs something to look up to in a sense, and that her dogmatic, deeply ingrained reverence of Stendar is brittle in that sense. She would never want to take it for herself. I ultimately changed the script to leave the ending open with the fade to white players see now. Here is also where I shared the script for Beyond Reach for her to read through. Say that there's no deadline for the update and she can take as long as she likes to get the lines in. And finally, flagging that Beyond Reach is pretty brutal. Again, quote, "Truly though, I am excited." 5 days pass from this with no response, so I check in. Vigilant is submitted early, which was very much appreciated. Again, please note that I say there's no stress about getting Beyond Reach in ASAP, and that she should rest. Now it's finally time to tie this all together. After this point, I only sent the occasional email just to keep her in the loop about any script changes, or this one where I had a total brain fart apparently. Finally, here we are. Before I show you the next message, let's first take it back to the bit we were just looking at. 1. Her enthusiasm over Vigilant, that she was excited to get into it, then the same for Beyond Reach when, just like Vigilant, I revealed it to her well in advance and even told her that what the mod covers and what Celestine would go through was brutal. Finally, the script she's given just shy of a month before. It is, after all this, that Thea sends this reply. By her own admission, Thea Salone didn't even know what Vigilant, or more damningly, Beyond Reach were at the time she enthusiastically agreed to them, apparently believing they were official DLC. Not once over these many weeks did she raise any issues with said content, and that she admittedly didn't do any research about either of these mods beforehand. Before she excitedly agreed to them, and then I proceeded to spend ages working on said updates. Not only that, it is only after a month that she even read the script. Like I've said many times already, she could have taken 6 months, a year, a bloody century to submit the lines if she wanted to. I was absolutely burned out at this stage, but already actively working on other mods like Bad Moon, but after being given the script a month beforehand, she hadn't even read anything about the update or the mod until then. The link to what this update would have been is also pinned in the comment below. This comes full circle back to all the dickheads in the Reddit thread from ages ago who were trying to make out that I threw a tantrum as soon as she disagreed, that I should have run it by her beforehand, and I've shown you everything that proves that to be categorically, overwhelmingly false. But yes, of course, I'm the unprofessional one. And you know what? Even then, even after all this, not just Beyond Reach, not just Vigilant, not the waiver, the 2 missed deadlines, the month and a half it took to get 1.0 in, I still went out of my way to try and accommodate her as best I could. I even offered to remove lines she wasn't comfortable with. But no, and again, like I said way back, she had every right to not want to voice anything to do with Beyond Reach, whether it was the content itself, or she was too busy, or anything. And again, how would I have been able to force someone to do it anyway over email, even if I wanted to do that, like the big, overbearing arsehole that Elizabeth Plant has been trying for years to make me out to be? You know, despite all this evidence to the contrary, the actual problem is what happened around all this. Someone enthusiastically agrees to do Vigilant and then Beyond Reach. They're given the scripts, they're told well in advance, they're even notified about the heavy content it covers, but at the 11th hour with everything ready to go, they admit they've only just read the script, they didn't even know what these mods were in advance, and now they're backing out. I mean, wouldn't you call that unprofessional? This is the final message. I've redacted part of it because they have talked about some very personal things, and like I've said many times over, unlike certain people, I don't kick people when they're down and do so out of some kind of malicious delight. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it was shortly after this that I announced 3.0 for Celestine was cancelled, and after the gigantic struggle it was to get the mod made, I wanted nothing more to do with it. 2.6 was pushed out, that had some basic fixes for Vigilant that were meant for 3.0, and that is and will remain the final ever update. Unless I'm mistaken, her email icon throughout all this also had her avatar. Since it's been greyed out, I would assume she has since blocked me. Oh well. Now things come full circle. Assuming anyone makes it this far and you didn't just come in to call me a left-wing, right-wing, centrist, est-phobe, back and forth over the Irish Sea, and refuse to look at the mountain of evidence I've shown to back up every single thing, this brings us all the way up to that comment made on the Bad Moon mod page. Was I burnt out at this stage? Absolutely. Was I frustrated after trying to push through years and years of shit? Harassment from mod users, YouTubers, Discord server echo chambers, and people screaming in my face that everything I do is buggy and broken because they didn't read the description and don't know what the distinction between a bug and a conflict is? Absolutely. Was I just so fucking tired of trying to get VAs to do what they were asked in a project they willingly auditioned for, reading all the expectations listed clearly up front, only to sass me when I get in touch, expect preferential treatment, not follow any of the basic submission guidelines, ignore the acting notes I include in all my scripts, deliver final lines that sound nothing like what they were cast for, go silent for weeks or even literal months at a time, only to come back and start telling me their life story, smile with one hand, and then air absolute bullshit privately? Absolutely. How dare I be human? How dare I write one single comment out of frustration after years of staying silent and just sitting there and taking it? Clearly this is the smoking gun, and I'm obviously some kind of voice acting fascist. Again, I am not the victim, I am not the martyr. No one in this situation is. I'm just the only one willing to admit that. Also again, I don't want an apology. I don't even want anyone to acknowledge that I'm right. Just leave me alone for fuck's sake. And after deleting everything to get it away from it all, stop dragging my name, my work, and my reputation through the mud when the comments flying around are completely baseless and only serve to prove the narrative I've been telling you about this whole time. Elizabeth, by her own admission, sees someone post my comment a few days later in the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord server, and then, not wanting to miss a prime opportunity to come in and talk down to a person she deeply hates and has been trying to ruin for years, launches into a bitter and personally motivated wall of text about something that I will remind you yet again she had nothing to do with and I would never have spoken about beyond this one annoyed comment. Again, she just couldn't help herself because she is a narcissist that white knights for voice actors while failing to see what a nasty person she really is. Now let's go through point by point again and eviscerate the latest entry in her attempted character assassination that stretches back years. I have also been very kind about Thea's performance publicly. I think she did a wonderful job, and despite issues over development, I had nothing against her personally, and one frustrated comment is hardly some grand smear. Yes, Elizabeth, I did hint at it in a public way, because someone was asking under the expectation that I was going to do further support for Celestine. It's only because of this comment, because you had to come in and you had to make it all about you, that all of this has been aired. Some of what she says is just subjective too, which you can make of what you will. There's no point in arguing against her subjective opinion, so I'll just move past it. Feel free to read through everything as we go though. Next paragraph, she reveals the real reason why she's here, as it's a great opportunity to kick me in the teeth and air dirty laundry because apparently she wasn't happy to just stick to ranting about me in DMs and Discord servers. My expectations are not unrealistic, and as I have shown with so many goddamn receipts over this video already, I do not badger anyone. This point about Kana is very telling. First of all, it's funny how the guy who voiced Bacchus, a character that had considerably more lines than Kana, had no issues submitting within the rough 2-week deadline, but that's too easy, so let's keep going. Elizabeth claims that I harassed her, that the voice acting Gestapo that's definitely not been disproven with overwhelming evidence already, was on her tail every single day. She also uses the word hounded to really nail it home. What happened with Kana was this: Elizabeth Plant was cast the same way as anyone, she was added to the server and given the same announcement as anyone, and then 2 weeks go by. She hasn't submitted her lines, so it's at this point I check in and ask how things are going. What Elizabeth is trying to do, very obviously by the way, is make out the very moment the 2 weeks passed, I was on her case like some kind of mad dog. She knows this is wrong because Kana was still not finished even weeks after this point. Obviously, it's been a long time and I can't remember what was said word for word, but checking in every day is something I do remember doing, although it was done politely, much like I've always done. I don't know if it was 10 days straight like she claims, but yeah, I was sitting on Mythos and waiting for the last character to come in so I could release the damn thing. I have never said to anyone that I would recast them. She has no evidence to back any of this up, and again, this is a slippery and incredibly dishonest portrayal of what happened. The Medelia comment is equally disingenuous, and I think she knows this, but regardless, it's very easy to disprove. What happened originally was Countess Medelia, the person who's been hounding Bacchus with the vigilance of Stendar for years, was voiced by the woman who did Varney in Citizens of Tamriel. I don't remember her username. She submitted her lines pretty quickly from what I remembered. The quality was terrible and I couldn't salvage it in editing, so I asked her to do retakes. It was at this point that she backed out of the role entirely, leaving me in the lurch. So I asked, yes, asked Elizabeth Plant if she would like to voice Medelia too. She agreed. Nothing was dropped on anyone. I did think you were the most reliable, Elizabeth. That was a compliment. Same goes for the recommendation on CCC that I gave you for Adara in 2019. I trusted you. I had no issues working with you and would have kept doing so as I have with other VAs. It's only what came out later and I saw firsthand how you've spent years trying to ruin me and maliciously tear down my and other mod authors' work both in public and private that I realized what a colossal mistake it was to ever associate with you. You are a nasty, nasty person, and I hope that, at the very least, the point sinks in to leave me alone. If not the opportunity to critically reflect on yourself and the immeasurable damage you've done to the modding scene and voice actors in your supposed attempts to defend it. The real cherry on top is her mentioning disdain. And still you keep going. What do you think you're achieving with this girl boss, Lamau, love heart, slay I guess facade? Again, you have no self-awareness and you keep proving my point. Anyway, to close out this paragraph, she attempts to portray herself as the young, plucky recruit that was forced into anything by Big Bag Craftian. Except, again, she happily agreed to voice Medelia. I would have found someone else if she didn't. It was no big deal. And this laughable attempt to get sympathy as if she was just starting out falls apart with a 2-second Google search. Elizabeth Plant began voice acting in 2015 and has repeatedly made reference to the fact she's some kind of veteran and hero of the community. Mythos was developed in 2021. That's 6 years. 6 years, Elizabeth. And also, again, I have already shown that the 2 weeks is not set in stone and she knows this. You really can't make this stuff up. Interesting that none of this was voiced at the time and it's only come out years after the fact because it's definitely not part of an ulterior motive or anything. She's holding on to this 2 weeks thing because I think she realizes it's the only thing she has left, which I've already proven I don't hold anyone to anyway. Next paragraph. I spoke about this earlier with the whole burnout thing. It has nothing to do with this situation. I could say I'm burnt out as much as I like, it doesn't change anything, and it's not the kind of damning reflection on my character you think it is, Elizabeth, but she brought it up as another little jab because she couldn't resist. One thing worth noting too is what she's even doing looking at my CCC profile to begin with, but yes, I'm the stalker, obviously. It's not like this is coming from the person that has been ranting at every opportunity in Discord servers, Reddit, YouTube comments. Meanwhile, I'm just off in the corner, actually working on and consistently releasing things. Yeah, I cast before the deadline. I've already shown screenshots of this already, but here's some again. What are you trying to prove by raising that? Is it illegal to cast before the deadline is over, Elizabeth? You know, even when I make that crystal clear up front? Yeah, didn't think so. Rush actors through the recording? No, that's already been disproven tenfold. Same goes for this dodge criticism, which I've already disproved with overwhelming evidence earlier, and she caps off this little rant with commenting about throwing out strays and slandering people. I don't think I need to elaborate on that further. Again, it's so hypocritical, it's hilarious. Elizabeth seems to genuinely believe she's the White Knight. I made one comment, one, and she, of all people, has done a spectacular job coming in and kicking her own goal by seizing on that like some wild hyena. Next paragraph. Elizabeth, calling herself professional, as she, even separate from her behaviour over many years, writes a wall of text is another funny moment, but the bulk of this comment is again trying to make out that I rush through everything and I force voice actors in some kind of do or die arrangement to submit in 2 weeks before I, start spitting fire or something. The last section alone, the one with Thea, the person she's come in here to supposedly defend, already disproved this without a doubt, considering she had a month and a half to submit 1.0 alone. Keep grasping at straws though, it's so easy to disprove all of this. Basically the same thing again, she's being incredibly disingenuous and trying to frame me as some overly demanding arsehole where I should just have zero expectations, people can do whatever they want, submit whatever they want at whatever quality level, and if I do anything less than worship the ground VAs walk on simply because they're doing it for free, I'm obviously a gigantic arsehole. Next paragraph. Note that little comment about Bad Moon at the end and how immediately after posting this, she went on to that video by Zero Period Productions and felt the need to sink the boot in even further. This is your White Knight, everyone. As for the testimonials, this is so blatantly wrong and I'm amazed she actually wrote this. So let's go through some of the recommendations I've given to easily disprove this. Apologies to the voice actors for showing these. Let's also take the time to remind everyone not to harass anyone featured here. They have nothing to do with it and don't descend to that level. Now let's take a look at some of the recommendations I've given and received. Let's see if the many people I've worked with over the years can corroborate what Elizabeth supposedly claims. Let's even look at the recommendation I gave her. Again, the one that stayed up on her website for years as well. Where have I ever mentioned speed? Yeah, I didn't think so. Funny how that works. When I have nothing but positive things to say about VAs and they have nothing but positive things to say about working with me, you have to wonder where this narrative of disdain and so forth that Elizabeth has dreamed up has come from. It's almost like she's making it up. There's even this one by Glyph, who voiced Iva in Old Blood, who has since deleted both her recommendation and the one I gave her, despite me having no issues with her. Why? Because it goes against the narrative being spread in the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord, but that's the great thing about the Wayback Machine. You people believe you can say what you like, make up allegations without evidence, and then delete it all to pretend it never happened. Keep going. Again, I have never hidden anything throughout all of this. One guy against a mob of terminally online narcissists who use proxies, echo chambers, and moderators because they know they have no leg to stand on. Cowards. Finally, to cap off her wall of text, we get the richest one yet. One, that she, quote, never spoken bad about me publicly, which is so insane I can't believe she actually wrote that. And two, this baseless claim I somehow view voice actors as lesser. Finally, for the hypocrisy to really hit home, she, of all people, says to me not to speak behind people's backs. Oh boy. Boy, oh boy. And that's just one comment done. I'm not going to go through my comment because I'd be doubling up on things I've already said, and it's freely available for you to read through along with this whole exchange in part 1 linked below. Let's move on to the next comment, but before we do that, I just want to let you know just how telling it is that not once throughout this entire kerfuffle has she ever denied that she has maliciously been after me all these years, that she gladly took a role in Redux and gleefully tore it to shreds in the Skyrim Extended Cut server's public channels, that all she does is speak bad about me publicly. Not once has she denied it. In fact, she refuses to even acknowledge it. Why? Because she knows, I know, and other entirely different people with no skin in the game who have since stepped forward and corroborated my claims know this actually happened. Just like deleting the comments on Nexus Mods and hiding behind her friends and the staff, Elizabeth Plant seems to believe that the hate train against Craftian, confirmation bias, and time passing will ensure that this never happened. How wrong you are. Anyway, let's move on. More irony about dragging people's reputations into it, not just about me, but the fact she started this and exposed herself and many others in the process. This paragraph is the start of something you're about to see a lot in this, which will take the moral high ground and try and show how much bigger and better she is than all this. You know, the person that came in and started it to begin with. So stunning, so brave. Yes, Queen. Elizabeth Plant sat and likely still does sit in the Extended Cut server as she has for many years and feeds off the crowd of sycophants that discords are inherently designed to foster. Maybe if you guys had spent less time slandering mod authors with zero evidence, voicing their flaws by opening anything they release in Xedit the moment they release, and organising $50 Patreon tiers when you have literally nothing to show for it, you might not be 4 years over. She then tries to play it off that she's not active on Reddit or the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord, which is very funny considering the context of this all. She apparently thinks her getting involved is one giant coincidence, before she circles back to what I said about her own project, Avenoir Scriborn. I don't know if evidence of this still exists. My guess is she's probably deleted as much as she could like everything else. But to explain what that was, Elizabeth worked on a project called Lacrimusburg, a small world space from what little I saw at the time, which was for her follower Avenoir Scriborn. This was posted on Twitter, Casting Call Club, etc. It's not some big secret. Why is this relevant? Because the entire basis of her unprovoked ranting in the first place was calling out my professionalism, how I manage voice actors, and how I organize project milestones. The irony was well and truly lost on her when she realized I'd heard about that mod. One that, you know, she cast voice actors and got them to submit lines, and then showed her own professionalism and style of project management by cancelling it and leaving those VAs and the lines they submitted in the lurch. Let that sink in for a minute. This is the kind of person that's trying to white knight, remember? She absolutely bumped the mic, later publicly trying to play it off in the Skyrim Extended Cut server that I, quote, butchered her lines. Meanwhile, this is the same person currently claiming that she mastered it when the audio I received was a bunch of raw audio files that, yet again, didn't follow the submission guidelines I've made clear from the beginning in every single project. I was then left with no choice but to try and salvage this on the night of releasing part 3, when I realised that sound in the background wasn't noise but her actually bumping the microphone. You're right, Elizabeth, it is standard that voice actors submit the one file. That's even what I ask for in most projects, with some leeway for larger followers if they prefer to do chunks such as Rosa or Celestine. That's the thing though, because you didn't do this. Because as we've already been over, you weren't just well over the 2 weeks, you were even weeks past that deadline, and I ultimately just asked you to submit the dogshit Audacity file, with over half of it still being raw recordings, which I then edited in one sitting as I worked 16 hours basically non-stop the night of releasing Mythos. She just can't admit she's wrong, and she's doing everything she can to make excuses. This is actually crazy. Finally, we come back to the recommendation. Here it is again. Funny that she'd leave it up for so long when I'm supposedly the big bad she's been trying and failing to make me out to be this whole time. Almost as if she's making shit up, right? Not much to say about this one, we've already been over the same thing. You might be asking why I didn't raise any of this at the time. 1, most of it I already did, and 2, Nexus Mods has a limit of 5,000 characters per comment, and I already hit that in my first reply alone. Plus, who would have bothered when she was going to, and already has, ignore and twist everything I've said anyway. And finally, on brand, she ties it out with calling what I've done a spiteful little tirade. Did I blow up? Absolutely, and I'm not trying to hide that fact. Despite what the Reddit narrative would have you believe, there have been no constant crash outs. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever kicked back and gave as good as I've got behind the scenes for years. It's just that she wasn't expecting someone to equally go for the jugular in response, and you just know Elizabeth and all her friends were eagerly waiting for me to say something sexist or whatever so they could use it as some kind of damning proof. Elizabeth immediately ran to the moderators and closed ranks with the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord because it's infinitely easier to throw a man under the bus when he calls out a woman that has been nothing but vitriolic and gone out of her way to destroy my life and every little thing I release for years than do something as simple as, just leaving me alone, whether she wants to keep attacking me publicly or not. Just somewhere else, Elizabeth. We don't have to hold hands. I'm not asking you to sing Kumbaya here. Yet again, she has never denied any of the allegations I've made against her. Why? Because she knows they're true, and that other people have seen it both in public and private channels. Take a bow, Elizabeth. Your lack of self-awareness is truly something else. That little Lamau bit at the end is something she likes to fall back on, like the love heart, like the whole slay, I guess, because she's so above it all, guys. Clearly she's the professional one in all this, and should all just bow down before your queen. It wasn't enough to simply say that she hates my writing, or she's not interested in playing my mods, or she doesn't want to work with me again and get on with her life. She has orchestrated years and years of harassment while simultaneously trying to make herself out as this infallible white knight of the modding community. To say it's disgusting is an understatement. Elizabeth Plant is a narcissist and a cry-bully, and I stand by that now as I did then, and I will in 100 years from now. For the last time, leave me alone, Elizabeth. Same goes for everyone on the Skyrim Extended Cut server and dev team and the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord. Get on with your life and stop basing your entire existence around the internet. The rest proceeds from here like it was in part 1 and part 2. If you've made it this far into the video, I don't know why you're here if you don't at least know the gist of that already, but read it if you want. I won't drag this out any longer than it needs to be. Lastly, to round this video out, let's go back to her 2-part reply in that big Reddit post we looked at in the beginning. Despite supposedly moving on to bigger and better things, that she's above it all, it's of course just yet another entry in a long series of coincidences that Elizabeth Plant felt the need to come into the Reddit thread and paint herself in a better light. Someone who's done all this in good faith, for the betterment of voice actors in the community worldwide, when anyone with half a brain can see from the tons and tons of evidence I've provided that she's a nasty person that operates solely in bad faith. So let's go point by point once again. First up, we have yet another I'm so above it all, that's why I'm here commenting on Reddit again, and my cabal on Discord is the one that keeps sending me screenshots even though I definitely, absolutely got no satisfaction from stirring all this up comment. She then drops screenshots between members of the Nexus staff and her in the apparent belief that this was some kind of big own, but oh boy, it's really not that at all. I take my hat off to you again, Elizabeth, because for one, not only trying to misconstrue what I was saying yet again, but more importantly, two, gladly providing evidence that shows she's had a direct line of communication with the Nexus Mods staff, at least as far back as September last year. Let that sink in for a minute. If you need me to spell that out, Elizabeth Plant has just done yet another spectacular job of kicking her own goal, as her claim that she had nothing to do with posts being removed has just lost what little credibility it might have had in the first place. Yes, Elizabeth, it just so happens that the reaction you were baiting for, the drama you started that no one asked you to, the comments you made, all that conveniently being removed by the Nexus Mod staff, not just on April 4th, not just on April 6th, but over and over again, even weeks later, it's all just one happy coincidence. Do you seriously expect anyone to believe that? Like I said, this is a divine comedy that just keeps on rolling. Speaking of divine comedy, let's jump back to my other point about this, which is her response about the interview taking place last year. Here is a screenshot from part of what I wrote in part 1. Now, Elizabeth appears to have attached on to the fact that when I said, quote, just interviewed, she took that to mean I literally meant that day or the day before and so forth. Now, there's some ambiguity there, and I probably could have worded what I was saying better, but do you seriously think what I was implying is that she was interviewed that very day? Of course not. I know how this stuff goes. Of course it went through weeks, if not months of verification, rewrites, changes, whatever. The interview was posted that day. Whether it was done that very day or written up 10 years before doesn't change anything. Let's go through the timeline of events because it's pretty clear what happened. On April 1st, Elizabeth sees the screenshot that someone dropped into the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord. By the way, I'd love to see the colourful language and more baseless vitriolic claims that no doubt went on for hours if not days afterwards, but I guess that's been conveniently cropped out. Elizabeth comes in and involves herself in something that had nothing to do with her. If not the same night, she reaches out to Nexus Mods or likewise gets her buddies to report my replies so she can conveniently keep her hands clean and play dumb by April 4th. This was not enough because if my comments hadn't been flagged to oblivion already, she is likely reminded as this is all going down that her little puff piece is going to be posted on the 14th of April and it would be inconvenient for stuff to blow over and potentially make her look bad because that's one thing narcissists can't stand. She even admits this and pretends that she was totally not expecting a reaction and decided to move on, you guys. You know, after posting the YouTube comment, of course, and coming back to post this entirely new wall of text. But she's so above it all, guys. She's so much better than any of you. Suddenly, everything disappears on April 6th because the cry bully is getting her friends on the Nexus staff to cover up everything before the interview drops on the 14th. What a coincidence. Either Elizabeth herself or her little mob that has to operate as a group because they're spineless cowards that can't do this in person, continue to watch and even remove comments not just from me, but from entirely tame, inoffensive posts made by other Nexus users who have nothing to do with this. Another coincidence. I'm now taking a break at this stage after severe burnout and a whole new wave of bullshit from someone who's been after me for years to cap off an 8-month bender of working on mods non-stop. On April 14th, the interview drops as planned. I leave a comment the next day calling her out on her bullshit, and the Nexus does what it has done throughout this entire process. Double down to save face publicly, help Elizabeth and her little cabal delete everything, all to cover their ass and defend someone they are quite clearly buttering up for PR, if not a permanent staff role of some kind entirely. I even said as much to Pickysaurus at the time. Side note, but it was during this conversation in their very transparent attempt to cover their ass for someone they had just propped up on a pedestal and fawned over, the moderator genuinely said to me that I might have been the one to hide everything, and I responded to that absolutely insane claim accordingly. Of course, they were a bit red in the face on finding the post after hours and hours later, but you can read more about this interaction in part 2. Back to the Reddit comment. Next paragraph. We kind of already covered this one, but I've got to call attention to this absolutely pathetic attempt to portray herself as the hero. Quote, "What kind of friend and colleague would I be if I didn't stand up for those I care about? Are you for real?" Not only is this so sappy, it's painful. This again goes to show how completely detached from reality Elizabeth Plant is, and that even now, she still genuinely believes herself to be the hero in all this. Absolutely insane. Alright, again we're falling back on DMs as some kind of big own. I also received DMs of support Elizabeth, and that they didn't support you or your friends either. But again, what does that have to do with anything you're talking about here? Because you have friends saying, "Oh, she's not so bad," that immediately clears you? Like, do you not see this? But let's take a look at some of these DMs. Some of them are just purely subjective, saying that she has their support. That's fine, good luck to them. This one that, quote, "You murdered him, holy shit," is funny given everything we've gone over so far, but I'm not going to drop any of the DMs I received because again, it doesn't mean anything and it's not relevant to this conversation. I also didn't screenshot them because they're not relevant as evidence, Elizabeth. Good for you, someone from the Bad Moon cast threw their hat in the ring. This person being the same one I already spent an entire section eviscerating their claims about the Critical Role and the Death of RPG Culture video I made. So stunning, so brave. Slay, I guess. Right, Elizabeth? Again, these people are cowards because they can't say any of this publicly, and they're more than happy to take credit, recommendations, and so forth, while dragging me through the mud in private. This attempt to drop DMs you've received as some kind of damning evidence has achieved nothing, and shows that you apparently think the ad populum fallacy just immediately proves everything you said is in the right, and everything I've done is in the wrong. The real kicker of this paragraph, though, is, once again, Miss Above It All saying that she doesn't want to keep engaging. As she keeps engaging, as she engaged in the first place, as she engaged as she went and made that YouTube comment, as she continues to engage in the Skyrim Voice Alliance Discord server that she seriously expects people to think she only checks once in a blue moon. Of course, she doesn't just stop there with the hypocrisy and then makes comment about how I talk about her publicly and in private. Do you still not see it, Elizabeth? Is any kind of self-awareness still so far beyond comprehension? And to top it all off, she falls back on being the victim, that big bad Craftian has shown his true colours once again, and that everything I said to her was so hurtful. Elizabeth, as you still haven't denied anything I've said, you know this is false. We're just expecting Reddit upvotes or something to legitimize what you were claiming. Funnily enough, she qualifies only in the two main messages that she didn't say anything hurtful. What's that called again? A Freudian slip? One that she again has only done to strengthen the mountain of evidence I've brought against her to back up everything I've claimed. Meanwhile, what has she shown? Some direct messages showing she's friends with the Nexus Mods staff? A couple of DMs from people who have sided with her? Wow, pretty damning stuff, huh? Doubling down on the persecution complex once again, she claims Hakana had 1,200 lines. This is so easy to disprove it's actually funny. Here, let me take a sec to open up the folder and show you the total lines she had. Almost half that. Uh-oh. She just has to die on this hill of the 2-week thing, which I've already shown has never been set in stone anyway. God, it's like I'm beating my head against the wall here. Okay, next up. Remember, we're into the second post now of someone who's so above it all, doesn't engage, and yet posted another wall of text. Keep slaying, Queen. I've already shown, by literally her own evidence, that she has a direct line of communication with the Nexus staff since at least September of last year. Even if you wanted to be astronomically charitable, performing the kind of mental gymnastics that has won Elizabeth Plant an Olympic medal, do you seriously believe the fact she benefits from all the posts being removed and Big Bad Craftian supposedly being cancelled is all just one happy coincidence and she had nothing to do with it? I thought not. I mean, people have already corroborated that it's not just me, that other mod authors actively avoiding you and prefer to use AI. So I'm not sure what you're supposed to be proving with this not starting shit defense when it's so obvious that you relish the limelight and feed off of drama. She then goes off on a tangent about AI? What does that have to do with me? Yeah, I'm against it, Elizabeth. What does that have to do with anything here? No, she doesn't get it, and as we're about to see in a bit, you can keep your fake pity. Piss off, Elizabeth. It's so obvious what you're trying to do by pretending to care about me, despite all evidence and years of harassment to the contrary. Anyway, it's this comment that she links to that really got my attention though, because it's yet another anonymous DM. First of all, assuming this person is even legit and I have worked with them, they're not just hiding behind the redaction. It's funny that even now, they're acknowledging they haven't had a bad experience when they've worked with me. This is, yet again, another damning admission for Elizabeth's core point that I don't manage VAs properly and supposedly treat them with disdain that has already collapsed harder than the Twin Towers. Again, she's kicking her own goal by sharing these, so thanks, you've been a great help. What I'm not so keen on though is this accusation that I somehow didn't allow them to speak on the server when everyone gets the same role and permissions. There was even a bit of back and forth in the general chat for Bad Moon or whatever project they're referring to. This is absolutely categorically false, but they don't stop there. I have never, ever told anyone to leave the server, and everyone is treated the exact same way. Apparently they thought putting quotation marks around it instead of, actually providing evidence of anything they're claiming would help legitimize yet another pathetic attempt at smearing my reputation with something they obviously know isn't true. See, I too can make up baseless shit without any evidence and put quotation marks around it. That doesn't mean it's true, buddy. Lastly, to round out this paragraph, Elizabeth acknowledges that she's read that pin post on the Community Voices page, someone who just can't stay away, and then tries to play dumb again about what possible reason I could have for slamming her again. Gee, I wonder, how dare I not stand by, toe the party line, shut my mouth, and be a good little bitch, and yet again let you get away with something you yourself started. Let's do a 2-for-1 deal with this, since my voice is very close to giving out entirely. Again, Elizabeth tries to make out she's never tried to control the narrative despite the overwhelming, damning, and often her very own evidence to the contrary. I have held abuse at one person and one person alone, that being Elizabeth Plant. The comment about Thea on the Bad Moon mod page that she just couldn't resist making about her was not abuse, and you're grasping at straws if you seriously believe that. Like the fake, condescending pity earlier, she now tries to make out that she supports community voices and that she's not against me and everything I do. Not to sound like a broken record, but I don't think we need to elaborate on that further. I am not hostile or derogatory to most VAs I've worked with. She knows this, I prove that beyond the shadow of a doubt, and so forth. Let's just finish this before I keel over and die. It's this last little bit here that I find the most disgusting and dishonest. Elizabeth doesn't give a rat's ass about me, my work, my mental health. I honestly wouldn't be surprised that the Skyrim Voice Alliance or some other modding related server has already doxed me and they're sitting on all my personal information as we speak, given what I observed of Gordev, his similar server, and the guy who created the male romance patch for Kana. Elizabeth, the fact you would even try to sympathize with me after everything you've done, maligning me, my work, the very projects you were also a part of, my supposed political stances, posting every video, every mod I do in your little servers to pick it apart, encourage hate, and orchestrating a years-long campaign of harassment through proxies and very obvious alt accounts is nothing short of embarrassing. She's now saying that she hopes I overcome burnout, when she was more than happy to take that little jab earlier about the fact I kept coming back, and how dare I possibly say I'm sick of Skyrim? I wonder why. You can keep your pity, it's just as disingenuous and two-faced as everything else about you. You are a nasty, nasty person, and you are a narcissist that picked a fight with someone that had no issues with you and would have gladly kept working with you after Mythos, because apparently you thought you could. And because you're a coward that hides behind groups where it has just been me and only me against all this the whole time. And because she's such a girl boss, a queen, she just can't resist. Slay, I guess. Slay indeed. 83,000 characters deep into this text file, and probably a billion hours video by the time I record this fucking thing. It's obvious that not one of the many people who need to see this the most will even give it the time of day. You're welcome to come in here and smash that dislike button, leave angry comments, because as I have said over and over again, the more you try and pretend the narrative doesn't exist, that people are leaving me alone, the more you prove my point. Do you know what I've been doing these past 2 weeks? I went to the beach to see my family. I had Easter lunch and saw one of my cousins I haven't seen in years. I went out walking in the bush. I've been enjoying the cool weather, catching up on movies I've missed out, and yeah, out sick with a bad cold too. I even just started a new job last week, which for the first time ever, after like 10-15 years of shitty, unstable employment and being treated like I'm less than nothing, I actually find fulfilling. No one's probably going to watch this, but on the off chance you do, thank you for coming into this with an open mind and realizing that there's 2 sides to every story and that things aren't as black and white as they seem. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I felt absolutely nothing on deleting everything and then my account. Afterwards, and still to this day, all I feel is relief. What this video is one last attempt, one vain hope to defend myself against an unbelievable level of hatred and slander, and that the point will finally sink in, and that people who have been harassing me for years will finally leave me alone. I will not be returning to Skyrim or New Vegas. The itch page posted all the way back at the start of this video is a repo of everything I've previously released, and it will sit there inactive, probably forever. I've been trying on and off for the past year or so, but I can't even bring myself to do game dev stuff anymore. I think it's broken me. I've said enough, everything is public, and you're free to come to your own conclusions. To end this, I would like to share something I wrote in part 2. So long.